Hello. Today we're talking about chapters 11 through 14 of The Catcher in the Rye. It's still Saturday night. Holden has left the girls from the Lavender Room, the girls from Seattle, and he returns to the lobby of the Edmont Hotel. And instead of going to his room, he sits in a chair and just starts thinking. He thinks about Jane and the summers in Maine that they used to spend together. Holden seems to be thinking innocent thoughts, and then it leads him to impulsive actions of what he believes to be maturity. It happened earlier. He was thinking about his kid sister Phoebe, and then he went to the lavender room. Now he's thinking about Jane, and he's going to end up leaving the hotel and going to Ernie's. So Holden really just needs to go to bed or go home. He's not making good decisions right now. But while he's thinking about Jane, we get some interesting information about her. They used to play tennis and golf together during these summers, and checkers too. And Jane is someone that Holden really respects. She used to read all the time. She seems to be intelligent, and she's the only person that Holden ever showed the left-handed Allie's baseball mitt to. So someone outside the family that Holden feels a connection with. One day they're playing, it's raining outside, they're playing checkers, and her stepdad comes out and asks for a cigarette, and she refuses to answer him, and then a tear plops down onto the checkerboard, and she starts crying, and Holden starts consoling her. He wonders if something funny has happened to Jane by way of her stepdad. And of course, Holden always sensitive towards the underdog, always wanting to protect the innocent. He cuddles and snuggles her. Nothing happens romantically, but they do go to the movies and hold hands. And it's the only time we hear Holden reflecting on any sort of happiness. I held hands with her all the time. We'd get into a movie or something and we'd start holding hands, and you never worried with Jane whether your hand was sweaty or not. All you knew is you were happy. You really were. So memories of Jane, even though it was a few summers ago, it brings him this sort of simple joy. And instead of just sitting with that, he ends up hightailing it, grabbing a cab in chapter 12, and heads to a bar that's open super late at night, Ernie's. And in his cab ride, he encounters the iconic Horwitz, who is this hilarious cab driver. The previous cab driver didn't interact much with Holden. Holden asked him about the ducks. Holden asked him for a drink. Um, but this cab driver, they get into this like sort of debate. And he says, "What happens in the wintertime to the ducks? Do you know by any chance?" And he's like, "What are you talking about? How the hell would I know a stupid thing like that?" And this driver keeps turning around like, are they getting into a car accident? Um, and so finally, Holden's like, "No need to get sore." And the guy's like, "Who's getting sore? Nobody's sore." He says, "The fish don't go no place. They stay right where they are. The fish, right in the goddamn lake." And Holden's like, "Well, the fish, that's different. I'm talking about the ducks. What's different about it? Nothing's different about it. It's tougher for the fish, being winter and all." And he goes into this whole fish thing. The thing is, I think Horwitz can pick up on the fact that Holden's not really talking about ducks or fish. He's talking about himself. And so Horwitz says, "Listen, if you was a fish, Mother Nature would take care of you, don't you think? You don't think them fish just die when it gets to be winter, do you?" He's like, "You're goddamn right they don't." Um, but the thing is, Mother Nature doesn't naturally take care of everything. Allie wasn't taken care of by Mother Nature, and that's Holden's biggest worry and concern, the survivor's guilt, the uncertainty of it all. Um, so after he leaves Horwitz, he goes into Ernie's bar. Ernie's this great pianist, and he's super talented. But Holden hates it because he's got a mirror shining on his face, not his hands. He hates it because he's a show off, and that the crowd is just like, applauding wildly. Holden can't stand that. Remember, Holden does not like the hot shots in the game of life. And here's what Holden thinks to himself. He says, "I swear to God, if I were a piano player or an actor or something, and these dopes thought I was terrific, I'd hate it. I wouldn't even want them to clap for me. People always clap for the wrong things. If I were a piano player, I'd play in the goddamn closet." To me, that is indicative of J.D. Salinger. J.D. Salinger was a recluse. After he published The Catcher in the Rye, he reportedly wrote every day, but nothing else is really published except for a few isolated short stories. He moved to New Hampshire. He built like a crazy big fence. He was rarely seen in public. One time there was a fire on his estate, but he obviously refused to do any sort of interviews. He would sneak off and go to vacations in Florida, but this is like really his only book. And he hated the public eye. So it's funny how he's almost foreshadowing, the author, how he's going to react when everybody thinks he's amazing. So, as Holden's sitting there alone, feeling like he's surrounded by jerks, here comes someone he actually knows. And he's like, oh man, it's Lillian Simmons, DB, Holden's brother's ex girlfriend. And she's got big knockers. Holden observes the little things. And she's there on a date with someone, but she still clearly is not over DB. Tell your brother I hate him, right? Lillian's the kind of girl that blocks the aisle and waiters can't get past. She's very oblivious to people around her. Holden hates that. And then he's talking to the Navy guy for just a second, and he's like, you know what? I was just leaving. And the Navy guy and I told each other we were glad to have met each other. This is at the end of chapter 12. It always kills me. I'm always saying glad to have met you when with somebody I'm not at all glad I met. If you want to stay alive, you have to say that stuff, though. Holden really has trouble with these little social interactions, the things that we just sort of accept as normal. How are you doing? Fine, even if you're actually going through something pretty bad. I think it's part of the phony nature that Holden hates. It's just not authentic. And so but again, the game of life, you have to play it. Anyway, so he leaves and walks. How many blocks? 41 blocks back to his hotel. That's like 7 miles, and it's late at night, and it's cold. It's December in New York City, and he lost his gloves back at Pensy. And even though he's always losing stuff, right? And he's clearly spending money so profligately in this section of the book, he doesn't truly care. He has a sense of rich guilt and survivor guilt, but he also doesn't have a sense of accountability. He thinks to himself, one of my troubles is I never care too much when I lose something. It used to drive my mother crazy when I was a kid. Some guys spend days looking for something they lost. I never seem to have anything that if I lost, I'd care too much. It's because he's lost the biggest thing of all is a loved one in his life. So with that in mind and feeling so depressed and so lonesome, as soon as he walks back into his hotel, he said, I was feeling lousy, depressed and all. I almost wished I was dead. And then he gets into this crazy debacle with Maurice, a pimp. Maurice says, interested in a little tale tonight? $5 a throw, 15 for the whole night. Now, that's what Holden hears. If that is in fact what Maurice said, we don't know, because we're only reliant on this first person narrator. Holden, again, with his impulsive, impetuous decisions, he says, okay, his room number is 1222, so he lies and says he's 22 years old, and he's like, sure, send the girl up. And so Holden gets upstairs to his room, brushes his teeth, changes his shirt, he's super nervous, and he thinks, well, I might as well get my virginity over with. I want to be good at this someday. I don't even know when I'm doing it with a girl, when I'm with a girl, I don't even know what I'm looking for. And so he's like, okay, this is it. I'm going to do this. And then when she shows up, her name's Sunny. She looks so young. She's like Holden's age. She's wearing this green dress. Her voice is super high pitched. She's got this innocence about her. She doesn't cuss. Like fun you are. So long, crumb bum. And so Holden can't go through with it. Again, his like sensitivity towards the underdog. And so he just wants to talk. He says he just wants to talk. She obviously came there for a reason. And she keeps asking him, do you got a watch on you? And that kind of like, it's not going to mean anything to her. Another reason Holden doesn't even want to go through with it. And when he is hanging up her green dress, he thinks about how she's just some regular girl at the department store buying this dress, and how the salesperson probably didn't realize she was a prostitute. So that pity, Holden, he when she won't accept just wanting to talk, he lies and he says, "Well, I just had an operation on my clavichord." That again, Holden jumping to some physical ailment, and that's clearly a connection back to Allie. And so he says, look, I'll pay you. Here's $5. And she's like, it's 10. The cost is 10. And he's like, no. I was told 5. Once more, Holden doubles down. He holds on, Holden, to his principles. And he's like, look, I was quoted $5. Here's $5. That's it. That's all I'm going to pay. The irony is, Holden's been wildly spending money left and right. He's in a hotel. He's 16 years old. He just treated all those girls to all their drinks. But he will not give Sunny the extra money she thinks, clearly she thinks it's supposed to be 10. So that night, he lies in bed and he just feels so depressed, and he sort of starts praying, even though he claims to be an atheist. Remember the struggle with understanding religion. And he thinks back to a time when he and Allie, they were kids and he was going to go to his friend Bobby Fallon's house. It was years ago, and Bobby and I were going to go to Lake Sitabago with our bikes and take our BB guns. And he didn't want his younger brother playing with BB guns, and so he didn't let him come. But now that Allie's dead, Holden regrets this, and so he replays this scene in his mind when he's like so sad, and he changes it. He says, "Okay, go home, get your bike, meet me in front of Bobby's house, hurry up." I feel so bad for Holden. Gosh, he's just still so, he has so much pain, so much grief. And while he's lying there and kind of trying to pray, he gets a knock on the door. He shouldn't answer this door. It's like early, early Sunday morning. And he only has his pajamas on. He's so weak. He doesn't have his red hunting cap on. And he opens the door and it's Maurice. And he's like, "Hey, Chief, 5 more bucks." And Holden's like, "No, I already paid her." And he's like, "Look, it's 10. I told you 10. Now, it's hard. This is another thing we can debate in class. Was it 10? Did Holden mishear it? Or is this guy trying to chisel Holden, hustle Holden? Is this whole thing a scam? Hard to say. But regardless, Holden holds on, just like he did with Stradlater, and he absolutely refuses to give the money. So they barge in, Sonny and Maurice together, and Maurice flicks Holden in an area that's not very nice. Sonny just grabs $5 more. She doesn't rob him blind. Holden starts crying, and he's such a wimp here in this scene. Um, and then they just end up leaving. Um, but Holden, I don't know, he's at his lowest here. And when he's left alone after being socked in the stomach, he imagines he had gotten shot in the stomach. He plays it out in his scene that he's going to plug Maurice and kill Maurice. He's got this violent imagination, and Jane's going to come and bandaged up his wound. And then he thinks to himself, the goddamn movies, right? They can ruin you. I'm not kidding. I wonder if these moments in the book are what contributed to assassins going after John Lennon and Ronald Reagan. Um, but it's all in Holden's mind. We can tell he's a lot of thought and very little action. He's almost like Hamlet, right? Um, but then, as he's standing in the bathroom for about a half an hour, he was going to get back in bed. But what I really felt like doing, he says, is jumping out the window. I told you, pay attention to these window moments. I would have done it too if I'd been sure somebody would cover me up as soon as I landed. I didn't want a bunch of stupid rubberneckers looking at me when I was all gory. Holden doesn't want attention. Holden seems suicidal. We can be assured he's not, because he's in an institution telling the story, like he's alive telling the story. But he wants to jump out of a window, and that keeps coming back up. We'll find out why very soon. Thanks so much for sticking around.